And welcome back to the Great Give Radiothon on WNHH FM. Your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, livestreamnewhaven.org. We're in the last quadrant of the Great Give, the 36-hour annual bash where all the great nonprofits in New Haven come together as one team, raising money for everybody. Little friendly competition for matching dollars and prizes, and all in one place. All you got to do is go to thegreatgive.org. Don't forget thegreatgive.org. And you can look up all 406 not-for-profits in New Haven that are raising money through this platform over 36 hours. You can find out about them and donate right there. And in this segment, we're asking you to donate to Orchestra New England. And we have the best human being on earth to tell you why that's a good idea, because he has been the face of Orchestra New England since 1972, is it?
1974, the orchestra started. I came to New Haven in 1972.
And how long you been at Orchestra New England, Jim Sinclair?
Well, we founded it in 74, so we've just finished our 45th year.
And you've been holding the baton all that time?
Yeah,
Holy
783 concerts.
How many?
783 concerts.
Can you remember all 783?
I do.
Really?
Fondly.
Really?
Yeah.
Which was your favorite one?
One of the ones that was rained out. It was a lot of fun. We were at a ball field in Clinton doing summer outdoor concerts. And there were only 2 people left when the concert was called off. And we invited them on stage, and our piano, bass, and drums started improvising jazz. And everybody in the orchestra danced. That was serious fun.
That's fun. What year was that?
That was 1986.
How about in the last 5 years? What's the one you'll never forget?
Well, just this last Saturday, we did a concert that was completely transcendent. American music, including ragtime at the end of the concert, and one French piece, and it was absolutely transcendent.
Where was it?
We've been playing occasionally at the Unitarian Society of New Haven, which is actually in Hamden on the Hartford Turnpike. A fantastic place to play.
I love the name of Hartford Turnpike. It gives you this idea of people in
it's the way,
horse and buggy and the original cars to get to
days.
Hartford on this small road is to go in 95, 91.
And that space is such a grand acoustic space for us. It's clear. It's comfortable for the listeners. The lighting's great for the players. We enjoy playing there. Many people know us from the United Church on the Green, where we give the Colonial concert in the last 39 years, 40th one coming up in November. And at Battelle Chapel, where we celebrated our 45th birthday in March for big concerts. So we move depending on size.
How many musicians are in Orchestra New England?
Well, that depends on the literature. If we're doing Baroque, it might be 15 players. If we're doing something bigger, it could be nearly 50 players.
And who are the musicians?
They're professionals in this area, down from New York City, down from Boston, as far afield as New Jersey and New Hampshire when they're coming in.
And Jim Sinclair, when you're deciding how many musicians to have make it right for the music, you also have to think, how many can I afford to pay?
Yes, of course. It's a balance of affordability and special gifts sometimes ask us to play certain pieces, and we ramp up for those. Like our concert at Battelle in March, which was our 45th birthday. It was a very large affair. It had a premiere of a symphony, and it was just very exciting. We do great stuff.
45 years.
Yeah.
How do you keep it remaining exciting for you?
As the literature changes, it's exciting to do the new literature. Every time our players gather back together, it's exciting and kind of reunion and party for ourselves. So it's always exciting.
You talk about literature. Do you mean newly written pieces?
Yeah, all repertoire actually, but yes, newly written pieces. The orchestra has done 83 premieres in its years, and that's active in bringing new music, and our audience has always loved what I've selected for premieres.
Do you feel like you're helping to craft the music by deciding how it gets played?
Well, sure, yeah. That's
like how much, when you have a piece, does it tell you how many instruments are going to play what parts, or do you have some? Yeah, are you like a movie director who?
No. I select the music for the way it comes together as an entertainment package. I mean, after all, the music business isn't just a museum, and a museum isn't just a museum, it's an entertainment as well. And we have to be responsible for the audience having a good time hearing music that we want to play.
Do you, when someone's saying, "Hey, Jim Sinclair, I want to see Orchestra New England play this new piece," do you look at it written out, or do
Yes. Yeah, right.
That's quite a leap of imagination, especially the way music's written now, right? Isn't it?
It's a
written
technique
differently?
you have to learn, a craft you have to learn, to look at a page and hear that music and say, "Wow, this really has great sounds. This moves me. This has a message."
And is that
I want."
100% of the process, or is there some kind of audio submission as well?
Rarely. It's truly at the top edge of the software in music. There are ones that can play the sound and make it sound orchestral, but generally you get a very polyester synthetic sound that isn't
So
very
like
attractive.
GarageBand, yeah.
And if you're hearing that, you have to hear well beyond it to know how it would really work with live people giving emotion to it.
So I'm kind of stuck on this, trying to picture out how you look at the page, because when I look at written music, it is hard for me to hear it. Have you ever been way off? Did something end up sounding a lot different from the way it looked to you?
Sometimes it sounds better and feels better live than I could imagine. It's true, but it should sound the same. But the emotional pliability of the piece only comes alive when it's human beings massaging that music.
Can you cite to me a particular piece out of these 83 premieres where you can think, not the one, but a one, where you say, "Hey, that was kind of interesting. I saw the page. It even was better than I thought. Now it's had its own life."
Wow. Well, in a way that happens to every piece, because once you put the human element on it,
It must be
it
exciting
ramps
to see,
up.
and then to see it performed and an audience interacting.
Just recently, we performed a premiere of a piece. I think it was something like the 15th time that we've premiered this composer, because he's a member of the orchestra.
Who is that?
Long-standing member of the orchestra from the 1970s. Our string bass player, who stands up in the orchestra, and so everybody knows him. A earnest, athletic player, and everybody finds that charismatic.
What's his name?
And Joe Russo's music is emotional, has emotional content, and his music tends to be even better when you play it than you would imagine seeing it on the page. And that happened with the symphony that we just did.
Interesting. So bass player, because in all kinds of music, it's written by someone who might be often most conversant in a certain instrument, or starting with a bass line or a piano progression. How does him writing as a bass player affect the kind of music he writes?
He actually composes at the keyboard, so he's enough of a pianist that really he's well beyond the bass line, because he's hearing all the notes when he's playing it at the keyboard. And he's not the first string bass player to be a composer, of course. And think of the principal bassist of the New York Philharmonic, John Deek, who's a very fine composer too.
What's the name of the guy at Yale does the way out stuff? Ben Verdery. He's a bass player. Jack Bees?
Electric bass, yeah. Jack, certainly, right. Ben Verdery is the guitarist.
Yes, he's great, yeah. So how much overlap? You talk about 45 years you've been doing this, Jim Sinclair. How has the music evolved? How much have the barriers come down, become more porous among different kinds of music, and how has that affected what you play in 2019 versus what you played in 1974?
Well, we have access to more music by women composers and Black composers, or minority composers in general, and we've done a number of those pieces written either for us or music that I found out there, usually recommendations from my musicians who've played something somewhere else and said, that was a very good composer. You should look at more of her stuff. And there you find it.
I'll never forget when I was just a kid, I was at Yale. I took a course with Anthony Davis, the composer and pianist, who was known as a jazz musician. And he said, I have these elaborate scores, and when I get royalties, they call classical music more valuable than jazz, and so I get a lot less for my royalties than a classical composer. And I say, here's my score. What is making this different from classical?
Well, there are agencies that collect royalties, and they may be more effective at doing it with orchestras where they have contracts than every little boutique jazz place that may or may not have a license that kicks
But
money.
he also had records. In those days, it was
yes,
records,
right,
and
of
they were
course.
played on the radio.
And that's another collection agency.
His argument was that it was racist. His argument was that jazz
well,
was a lot
might
of
be
black
tilted.
composers.
Yeah.
But that was 1970. That was 1982. Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
That was a
times
long
have
time
changed.
ago.
Thank God.
Tell me about that, because you said you get more black composers and more
Right.
female composers.
Right.
What has that meant for the music itself? Has it affected what? Because I mean, when you think
it just opens up the variety of sounds. When you can get a Hispanic composer who is bringing in something from the Caribbean or Mexican sounds, historic folk elements, it enriches the palette and the panoply of music that you can choose from.
And we chose to play in the background a little bit here, Joseph Haydn Symphony Number 89 in F major, played by Orchestra New England in 1992.
Right, that's reaching back, historic. We've got lots of recordings, and we air them on some of the classical stations in Connecticut.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
And what was it about this piece? Why do you?
It's a less-known Haydn symphony that is extremely good, and we did a sparkling performance of it back then. It's always stayed with me. I think, in fact, we've repeated that piece in more recent years. Just happened to grab this CD, and there you are, historic look back at Orchestra New England, and that performance is at Battelle Chapel, 1992.
45 years. How many more years you can do this, Jim Sinclair?
Well, I wouldn't have thought about the 50, but there we've turned the corner, and now literally planning for what premieres and what special music and at what venues we want to appear 5 years from now. I live on the other side of New Haven, downtown, and I walked over here in 11 minutes. It's not going to break a record, but it's pretty darn good for 70-something.
Wow, that's awesome. And I could see that what you do keeps you so alive. So we got to keep...
Music keeps you young, you know.
It does. We got to help Orchestra New England get to that 50th year.
So I hope so. Thanks.
I think this is the minute to do it. You go to thegreatgive.org.
And we have a terrific matching that has just come up this morning, and
tell us about
up to $4,000 in match for gifts that come in. And of course, the Bank of America is doing matching as well. So there's a powerful uplift.
Okay,
gifts to Orchestra New England today.
So the single note you drop can turn into a symphony.
Yeah, there you go.
In this fundraising drive for Orchestra New England, now.
Every dollar becomes a holdout. Yeah.
Okay, and a chord, because you got sort of the.
That's it.
So right now, if you go to thegreatgive.org, please consider right now going to Orchestra New England and giving a donation as part of the Great Give, which we're doing the Radiothon. And for your, I love your energy, Jim Sinclair, and I just am so fascinated about how a person keeps an institution like this going and growing for 45 years and still.
Paul, you and I know what dedication is, and we make a difference in this town.
Yeah, and you sure do. And tell me about symphonies. Tell me about the specific challenge of making music work as a symphony as opposed to a small combo, sort of being in a club.
Well, the dynamics between chamber music or a jazz trio on up to the orchestral is that you start to have a sort of master of ceremonies when you get larger. You need somebody to do instant leadership, or there ends up having to be way more time in rehearsal and preparation for every element of the thing to be discussed and worked out. A conductor is a live quarterback combined with the sideline coach, using hand signals to bend the music and stretch the music, to lift the music, to push the music in time. So it's an art of instant
and this is an ignorant
leadership.
Question, but are you sometimes thinking, hey, the wind section isn't being heard enough, I need to move them up a little bit?
Yep, they get this.
Yeah.
And so, they react right away.
And in real time. So what about your hearing? How do you make sure that what you're hearing can be translated to what people in the hall are hearing? So if you're not hearing enough of the bass,
right,
or if the percussion is a little overpowering, how do you know in your mind what people in the audience are hearing?
Well, one of the things you do in music that has a kind of click going to it, you can actually not get into the guidance. You can back out, and I walk into the middle of the hall and listen.
During the piece?
During rehearsal.
Okay.
To get a feel of how that's happening out there. And I come back and I say, we need clearer articulation because it's muddy in the hall. we need more bass, or the second violins aren't as strong as the first violins, so let's balance that. I give them that feedback, and then I'll remind them in concert if I hear it not working on stage, it's probably not working in the middle of the hall.
So while you're quarterbacking, you're partly drawing on advanced scouting you did
That's
of the
right.
hall now when you're in there in Battelle Chapel alone in the hall, is that sound gonna be different from how it carries when it's full and
Little
human
bit.
beings are absorbing the sound?
Yeah. And I go to concerts in my own
That's true.
venues, and I listen and I hear what happens to the sound. I have, of course, a whole group of other conductors, and we talk about what happens on stage, what happens out in the hall, and we learn from each other.
That's awesome. Jim Sinclair, thank you so much for coming back this year. I love when you come on The Great Give.
Oh, well, I
make
love
me feel
doing
great
it.
about the city and great what's going on in New Haven.
I think a lot of you. I think the whole town thinks a lot of you for what you do for this town and what the station means and what all your publications have meant.
Thank you, and right back at you.
All right, thank you.
So we have at least 5 more years.
Okay, we'll do that.
More of Jim Sinclair and Orchestra New England. Folks, where you listen to Great Give Radiothon, WNHH FM, you just heard why there is absolutely every reason to donate to Orchestra New England, including the fact that it's going to be matched and matched again. So thegreatgive.org, time to hop on right now during our next musical interlude. Give some love to the Orchestra New England and a bunch of other organizations in town. And we're going to get you on the rebound in just a few minutes here at WNHH, your home for community radio.